Excellent. And with that, I think we will get underway. As I've been saying, welcome to the Green Entrepreneurship Online Workshop Series. This is the second week of our 6-week series on the topic of how to start a green business. My name is Brock Dickinson. I'm the entrepreneur in residence with the Faculty of Environment at the University of Waterloo. And I'll be turning things over to the full program just shortly. But before we begin, we do have a couple of details that we wanted to work through. First, we would suggest that if you would like, you can select a language to hear the entire session in French or English or Spanish. To decide or to select one of these languages, go to the bottom of your screen to the interpretation icon. And when you click that icon, you'll see a choice of any of those 3 languages. Select the one that you would like to listen in, and then click into that icon again and mute the original channel. That will allow you to hear all of the content today in the language of your preference. We will be video recording this session, so those of you who are interested in re-listening to some of the presentations later, this will be available on YouTube, and we will share the information about that with those who have registered. Before we move into the formal part of the content, as is our custom in Canada, I want to begin with a land acknowledgement. This event is being hosted by the University of Waterloo, which is on the traditional territories of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. And the University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract, which is land promised to the 6 nations of the Grand River, and it includes a region 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. I do want to say thank you to those who have helped to make today's workshop happen, to bring it to reality. Obviously, the University of Waterloo and the Faculty of Environment has been sort of behind the construction of this series, but we certainly couldn't have done this without our project partners. And we're particularly grateful to the Commission for Environmental Cooperation for all of the work that they have done to help make this series a reality. And they are the backbone of today's presentation, providing technical support and translation, and working with us to ensure that people know about this great series of opportunities that we're presenting. I'd also like to thank the EcoInnovation Network, a collection of 8 universities across North America that is working together on green innovation issues. And we've had their cooperation and support through the entire planning and delivery of this series of workshops. And you will hear from some of the members of this network in today's session as well. I also want to acknowledge for our American participants that this is election day, and we're not going to get political here, but we will say if you haven't yet had the chance to get out and vote, your neighbors in Mexico and Canada are hoping that you'll do that after the close of the session. And that we hope you'll make time to take that into account over the course of the day. And finally, I'm going to turn things over now to our MC for today's event. And it's my pleasure to introduce somebody that I've been working with very closely for the last couple of months and who has been doing a fantastic job in exploring issues related to entrepreneurship and environment. Demi Ojomu is a 4th-year urban and regional planning student at the University of Waterloo, with research interests in policy planning for urban development, as well as planning for ecotourism. She's previously worked in customer relations for a manufacturing company, but has also worked in land use planning and consulting in West Africa and in rural sustainability research in Northern Canada. She's currently the co-op student with the Entrepreneurship and Environment Office at the University of Waterloo, and I'm pleased to turn things over to Demi for the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you, Brock, and welcome everyone to the second session in a series of 6 workshops focused on the topic of green entrepreneurship. These workshops have been developed by the University of Waterloo's Entrepreneurship and Environment Office with support from the Commission for Environment.
I'm sorry, she's having problems with her microphone.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes. I'm sorry, Demi, interpreters are hearing you with a lot of feedback. I don't know if you had headphones or a headphone that you could use. We're hearing a lot of background noise and a lot of interference when you speak.
I will grab some headphones.
Thank you.
And just while Demi is doing that, maybe I'll remind people about the translation function. So again, at the bottom of your screen, it's the interpretation icon. If you click on that icon, you can select your preferred language of English, French, or Spanish, and then click it again to mute the original channel. And that will allow you to listen to the entire presentation without multiple languages overlapping and in the language of your preference. And just while Demi's getting set up there, I'll say that later on, we're going to move into a question and answer session with all three of our presenters. And at that time, you'll be able to use the Q&A function. So there is a chat function that some of you may be able to see in which you can kind of post comments with other participants. But to pose questions to the presenters, we'd suggest that you use that Q&A function. And we have folks that are watching the questions that come through there, and they'll be feeding those to Demi to ask to the panelists at the appropriate time. So sorry to jump back in there, but we'll keep the timeline rolling along. And Demi, I'll turn things back to you.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me now. So this workshop was developed by the University of Waterloo's Entrepreneurship and Environment Office with support from the Commission for Environmental Cooperation and the EcoInnovation Network. It's designed for youth, students, and entrepreneurs from across Canada, the United States, and Mexico. However, we've had more than 600 participants who have registered from
And let me jump back in. The joys of working online as we encounter these technical difficulties. So I think what Demi was going to share is that we have several hundred participants registered for these sessions, including obviously people from the 3 CEC member states, from Canada, the United States, and Mexico, but also from 35 other countries around the world. And we've been highlighting a few of these countries at the opening of each session. So let me mention today that we've had active participation from Sri Lanka, from Brazil, from Nigeria, from Turkey, and from the United Kingdom, as well as many others. But it's great to see so many people that are interested in the questions and ideas around green entrepreneurship. I'll keep moving on until Demi hits the appropriate sweet spot with the technology. But
I'm back, Brock.
Oh, perfect. Then I'll turn things back to you, Demi.
Okay, so I will be introducing today's speakers. There are 3 speakers lined up for today, and they will be giving 15 minutes presentations on how to start a green business. After that, we're going to open a Q&A session, and you can please use the Q&A function embedded in the Zoom platform to pose questions to the speakers. I'll try to select a few representative questions, and then we can be done in about 90 minutes. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker for today, who is Adrian Knight. Adrian Knight is a proud graduate of Niagara College, Canada, and is a current student of the Masters of Economic Development and Innovation program at the University of Waterloo. In her current role as a business information officer for the St. Catharines Enterprise Center, she provides small businesses and startups support and guidance on various topics, including marketing, regulations, and business planning. Over the past 3 years at St. Catharines Business Enterprise Center, Adrian has had the opportunity to work closely with hundreds of startups and small businesses. She enjoys building connections in the community and oftentimes connects clients with each other to share experiences or work together.
Thank you, Demi, for that kind introduction. May I share my screen to begin?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is amazing to see that there's young entrepreneurs and young talent from across the world that want to hear us speak today. I am a current student at the University of Waterloo, as Demi said, and I've had the opportunity to work with small businesses for over 3 years. And today I want to share a few insights and a few starting tools that you can use to start a business and that you can also use to start a green business. Our agenda for today is, first, I'll introduce you to a little bit about our office and what our team does, because you may have services and supports like this wherever you may be in the world right now. There may be something like us available to you. Then I'm going to jump into 3 topics where I see my small businesses struggle the most. When I'm working with startups and entrepreneurs, these are the areas that we really focus on to help them create successful businesses. We'll explore what is viability and what are some tools that you can use to help with viability. We'll talk about the marketing mix, and then I'll nod over to understanding barriers to entry. Being that we only have 15 minutes together, I want to give you a snapshot, just a quick snapshot of some things to consider when getting a business started. There are full degrees and master's programs that talk about each of these topics in detail, but today we have 15 minutes, so I really hope that you enjoy the content I present with you, and I look forward to your questions. So our team is part of a network of 47 small business offices across Ontario. So if you're in Ontario today and you're looking to start a small business and you're looking for tailored support, make sure to look on the provincial website. I've seen offices like ours across Canada and in the United States as well. So there are supports out there for you. What we do is we provide small businesses and startups with general business information. We have seminars and events on small business topics ranging from marketing to finance to human resources and much more. We also provide market research guidance. We'll talk about market research really quickly, but that business plan, creating that business plan document to say, how am I going to start my business? And what does that next year and 2 years look like that I'm going to be doing to be successful? And we have our business consultations. So there are supports and services, I know, across Canada and definitely across Ontario. So make sure you research these and look into them. Today's topic, green business. I work with small businesses, businesses that are considered traditional businesses. My clients aren't in innovation and technology. They are small business, they're restaurants, they're handmade clothing, cosmetics companies, professional services. But I see my clients every single day doing things that are green. So if you're out there and you want to start a business and you want to think green, know that green is not just windmills and solar panels. Green can also look like this. The photo is of one of my favorite clients, and I also am an avid user of her products. It's something called Moya Shea. She has partnered with a farm in Uganda to offer premium Ugandan shea butter. She pays the farmers above fair trade wages. All of her packaging is glass or cardboard, even down to the chapstick. So I know if anyone has ever used it in Canada, when winter comes, it gets quite cold. This is cardboard instead of the plastic waste. This is a cosmetics company thinking green. How about laundry detergent strips, avoiding the waste of the plastic that we use for a laundry detergent? Alternately, having the strips in cardboard packaging. How about reusable feminine hygiene products like the Diva Cup or Hannah Pad? Those are things that are reducing waste. Produce bags. I actually saw that they were trying to develop produce bags made from yucca and the starch that's in yucca. Maybe it's a cloth produce bag. How about a restaurant using seconds to reduce food waste, or using the whole fruit or vegetable to reduce that food waste? So when you're thinking green, and if you have an idea for a business or something inspires you, know that it's not just solar panels, it's not just windmills, it's not just new innovative technology. There are things that you can do in your process to think green. So how do you get started? What are some questions that you need to answer? Well, there are definitely more than 8, but these are my 8 rapid fire questions that I ask my clients. The first time I meet with them, I always ask, what is the industry that you're in? And what are the customer trends? What are your barriers to entry? We'll talk about those in a moment. Who is your target client? Hint, your target client is not everyone, but who is your target client? Who wants to buy this product? Are there enough of them for you to make a living? We want to start green, sustainable, socially minded businesses, but we also want to put a roof over our head and food on our tables. So do we have enough of them available to us that we can do that? What are my startup costs? The grand idea for your business. It's beautiful, it's amazing, it's exciting, but there are costs involved. So what tools and equipment do you need to get that business started? And how much is that going to cost you? Do you need suppliers? If so, who are they? My client, Moya Shea, she has her suppliers for her packaging and her suppliers for her shea. Also, she has essential oils. Those are all things that she does not physically have. So she needs to build those relationships. The biggest question I get is, where can I get the money needed to start? Starting a business costs money. Where will you get the funds to get started? And we'll talk about that in a couple of slides too. Then the big thing, if you've ever watched Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, I'm not sure what the version is named that's in Mexico, but what sets you apart? What is your unique service offering? What is your value proposition? What makes you different from your competition? So these are 8 key rapid fire questions that I ask my clients. And if they don't know the answer, research is key. It's taking the steps you need to look online, to get out to your community, and to find out. When we're looking at our business viability, viability is essentially, can it maintain itself? Can the business maintain itself and potentially turn a profit? If you're looking to support a social cause, are you able to support that social cause based on your business model? So there's 4 tools that I like to use with my clients. And again, we only have 15 minutes, so I won't be able to jump into a lot of detail, but I look forward to your questions. The first one is the business model canvas. Now, the business model canvas is 1 page, 9 various sections that all relate to your business. From who's your target client, what are your revenue streams, what are the costs involved, what is your unique value offering, what kind of relationship do you have with your clients, what are the key resources that you need to get started, how much is that going to cost you, who are your partners. So this model is essentially a 1-paged business plan. There's other canvases out there. There's something called the flourishing canvas. A lot of social businesses and green businesses sometimes use that flourishing model. It looks at more areas of the business versus just 9 stepping stones. And then there's the lean model canvas. That doesn't look at 9, it looks at more like 5. But this tool, if you have the opportunity to research it and look it up, is a really good starting point to help you lay out your idea. It is my favorite tool, and I love using it with my entrepreneurs. Every time they walk in the door and say, I have an idea, I say, here's the business model canvas, let's work through it together. Another tool to help you assess the viability of your business or of your idea is something called a break-even analysis. So this essentially says, at what point do my sales and my expenses equal 0? Because I know that at that point, I have the minimum threshold of sales I need to make each month to pay for my business expenses, because running a business costs money. So you don't know that you can make those expenses. For the break-even analysis, essentially, after you hit that 0, everything there afterwards would be profit. So what is the minimum threshold of sales you need to make ends meet is essentially what the break-even analysis helps you do. My next 2 are the startup budget. Earlier I said, you have an idea, you want to start a business. Let's list everything that you need to get started. What are the tools? What are the equipment? What's the resources that you need to start this business? How much is that going to cost you? So that startup budget is your starting point to say, okay, if I'm using my savings or if I need a loan, this is how much money I need to make it happen. The cash flow forecast usually goes hand in hand with the startup budget. This looks at your monthly output and input for the business. So essentially you're saying, this is your hypothetical sales that you will make each month, and then looking at your expenses for each month. You hope that in the sales forecast, you're not in the negative or zero, because that means that you don't have enough cash in the business to make those ends meet. The last one is something called a SWOT analysis. There's something you can also use called a PEST analysis, or PEST analysis, but I'll talk quickly about the SWOT. So this is your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. You can do this for your business. So you want to say, what am I really good at? What is our business good at? Weaknesses, where can we make improvements? Are there things that we're doing now that maybe aren't green or aren't sustainable or aren't social? Are there ways that we can improve these processes? Opportunities, what's happening in the marketplace? What's changing? What do people want or need? Because that presents an opportunity. The T is for threat. What is happening right now in the market, with my competition, with my business overall, that presents a risk to being viable and to being successful. So these are some 4 tools that I use with my clients, especially when they have an idea and they're looking to evaluate their business idea. This is where I get them to start. Another tool that you can use is something called the marketing mix. Again, there are university degrees all about marketing, but in one slide, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of the marketing mix. First is product, price, place, and promotion. Product. Am I offering something that people want? Do they want it? Am I offering it in the right amount? A lot of the larger companies out there spend a lot of time and money researching how many grams or milliliters should be in a package. Maybe you have professional services that you're offering. Are you going to package it? And the more that people buy, the more they save? Are you charging per hour? So think about the product. Is it something people want? Price. There's 3 ways to look at your price. 1, you can look based just on cost. So I have my coffee mug. I didn't make this coffee mug. I had a manufacturer make it for me, or maybe I made it by hand, but I had to pay money for the materials to make this. Now, let's say this cost me $1 to make based on just the materials alone. One way you can price yourself is by adding a markup. And that markup, if I'm selling it for $5 or even $10, I now have marked up my product and I'm charging that price. The other way that you can look at pricing for your business is based on value. What are people willing to pay based on the value that you're offering? So there is a natural high and low end to the market. Think about coffee. Think about your favorite cafe that you go to, or in Canada, we have Tim Hortons and McDonald's, same thing probably across the United States and Mexico. Maybe you go through the drive-through, or maybe you go to the local cafe. They have a different spectrum of price. And why? So there's a natural low end and a natural high end for your product that people are willing to pay. Where do you fall in that spectrum? Are you on the high end? Are you on the low end? The other thing is place. Where will you be available? Are you in the places that your client is so they know you exist and buy from you? Can they find you? I know I've been to the grocery store recently looking for a particular product, and I think I searched the grocery store for 45 minutes and still could not find what I was looking for. I eventually found it in an aisle I did not think I would find it in. So are you easy to find? The last is promotion. How are you going to market yourself? Are you going to use Instagram, search engine optimization? Maybe you have a classified ad section. That could work depending on your target client. So what are the promotional strategies that you're going to use to tell people, hi, I'm here, this is what I'm doing, and this is why you should buy from me? So that's the marketing mix. Our barriers to entry, I think I'm still okay for time. So our barriers to entry, I promised I would talk about these earlier. This is where I see my clients get stuck the most. They have an idea for business. They want to get it started, but they're not sure what barriers they have. There's a couple more that I'll talk about in the next slide, but the first one is land. This is, do you have office requirements? If you're starting a restaurant, maybe even if you are looking at building that solar panel, you probably need a space to do it out of. So can you do your business from home? Do you need a physical space outside of your business to operate? So these are typical resources for small businesses: land, labor, capital, and your intellectual property. So the first one being land. Do you need a separate space? Labor. Do you need to hire other people to help you with your business? If I'm starting a restaurant, I have a couple of clients that I work with that pay living wages. Their restaurants, they use seconds, and they try to use the whole fruit and vegetable, so there's no waste. To run a restaurant, you need more than one person. So think about your business idea. Can you just run it, or do you need help? Capital. Businesses struggle the most with capital. Access to financing, startup financing, cash flow. Capital is where businesses struggle the most. Do you have the capital available to you to start the business? How much money do you need to get the business started? Because this can be a barrier to entry if you don't have the finances available to you. The last is intellectual property. I am by no means an app developer, a web developer. I'm not an expert in marketing either. But that takes a particular intellectual property. To be a hairstylist, to create those solar panels, to come up with a new product or service takes a specific intellectual property. So do you have the knowledge set in your business? Do you have that experience available to you? If you don't, who do you need to work with to make that happen? One of my last slides before we finish off is again these barriers to entry. Where I spend a lot of my time with my clients is going over government regulations. Yes, starting your business is a lot of work, and the government also has some requirements for you as well. Typical regulations across Canada and most likely across the United States and Mexico as well could be something like licensing. So the government sometimes licenses specific types of businesses. Doctors have licensing requirements, nurses, but even more so. A lot of clients that I work with, if you're a restaurant, manufacturing facility, sometimes the city or the municipality wants that you have a license, and you need to get that license and be approved before you can operate. What about taxation? I'm sure everyone on the call today has sales tax in their countries. So this is a tax that we're paying on goods and services. You are going to start a green, social, sustainable business, but you are starting a business nonetheless. There are tax requirements, such as that sales tax. There's minimum thresholds you have to hit before you start charging those sales tax, but what are they in your country, in your state, or in your province? So knowing and understanding those are important. What about income tax? If you make a profit on your business, the government does want that you're paying into income taxes. So you might be on the hook for paying some money out of your profit for income taxes. Another common barrier or government regulation would be something like business insurance. Now, fun part is now you have this idea, you've gone through the SWOT analysis, you break even, you're really excited to get started, you're crafting your business plan. Now you're saying, I need funding to get this started. The first place you're going to find that funding is your savings. So working hard right now, maybe you're working a part or full-time job, you have savings available to you. That's most likely where you're going to be able to access your first funds to get your business started. Love money is a term that we use, and that essentially is friends, family, people who love you and say, I believe in you, and they gift you money for your business. The next one would be a loan. This is where we go to the bank, we give them our business plan, we give them our cash flow forecast that we've created, and we say, I am looking for X dollars to get my business started. When you go for a loan, they do ask for things like your credit history, they want to see net worth statements. So when you go to the bank, be prepared that they're going to ask you for more documents. The last, and I really hope that someone on the call one day is able to access, is a grant. Grants do exist for small businesses and startups. Grants do exist for green and innovative businesses. But the eligibility requirements are very specific. A lot of times, in Canada anyways, at that very startup stage, the grants that are available are very limited for business startups. So you're really going to be able to start your business from your savings, from friends and family who love you, from getting that loan, and then maybe one day being able to access a grant. I know that we had 15 minutes to connect. And I know that if you haven't dabbled in business before, or this is not your field of study, I might have just given you a whirlwind of information. But I really hope that you can take this information and that you can mold your business idea, because I would love to see what every single one of you are planning on doing in the future, because I know it's going to be amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
You might be muted, Demi.
Right, we continue to have some technical difficulties there. If Demi, if you can try to join us again. I know one of the things that's happened is Demi's computer has stopped working, and she has now joined us on her phone. That might mean that she is not in as a presenter on the panel, and so we will continue to roll with the technological challenges as we go, and hopefully this is all rolling smoothly from the audience's perspective. Adrienne, thank you very much for that opening presentation. I'm now going to turn things over to Dr. Claudia Sanchez at the University of Anahuac in Mexico. And we really look forward to Claudia's presentation. I mentioned the EcoInnovation Network earlier, and Claudia is one of the founding members of the EcoInnovation Network, where she has been using the work that she does at her own university in Mexico to help educate and enlighten universities all across North America about the wonderful things that she's been involved in. And it's really great to have you here with us today, Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you specifically to the University of Waterloo, Brock, and the CCE I'm part of EcoInnovation, and congratulations, Ran, for your interesting presentation. I am very happy that you focused, Adrian, in the model to start up a green company, because my idea is much more focused on adding the thinking and the environment around business, green entrepreneur. So to start with, what things do a green entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur need to understand as they start their business? Let's go to that specific moment, that entrepreneur that says that wants to do something, but he or she doesn't know where to start. So I call them baby steps. Start from zero, start with baby steps, with the basics. And for me, starting from the basics is on trying to acknowledge that sustainability has to do with how feasible is what we're going to propose with our ecosystem, environment, and connection with what is common where I live. Understand to which territory I belong, which is the biological corridor connected to this place, and start from that point, because sustainability is a key element that exists in that element. It's not an element that we're going to bring from a foreign model or a very foreign theory. Sustainability is there, what we are at, and we have to highlight it. So my first suggestion is to create a sense checklist. How do we as babies start understanding our environment? Through exploration. So explore the community, go to the markets, listen to the community, see what we observe, what we taste, what we feel, what we hear, what we touch, what caused happiness or pleasure, what we didn't like from the surroundings, and what we saw in when we toured the community. Something else that we have to integrate is the cultural element, which these elements will allow us to know what our habitats, customs, social rules, rights, history, unique words or elements that identify this culture. We have to understand that, because when we name, for instance, a product, or when we launch the positioning of our services, this habit, this word that we find in that community, that word will help us understand the line to start up, to start our product or to launch our product. That's why that in that initial checklist, we have to take notes of everything that we see, feel, taste, etc. Also, we also have to take into consideration trading, how they trade, how they do it, which are the chains of supply, what other industries are connected to this industry, to this community. All these will provide additional information to the first ideas that we want to collect. After we have this information, we have to map all the data we collected. How can we start these maps? First, we have to map the interesting elements that we found in the community. So we have to do this with 2 dimensions. The first dimension will be as an independent product or service that I will create, that I found that nobody has these products or services, and I can trade these products or services. But how can I insert them in a production chain that is already established in that community? It should not, I mean, it should not be completely new, or it doesn't have to be completely new. There are some products or services that will represent a variety of the products and services that are already there. We sometimes take long to come up with a new product or service, but sometimes our new idea can be inserted into something that is already there, that offers an improvement in terms of sustainability, and that's exactly what we want to detect. In addition, we have to create a map of these elements. Not only should it be a new element, but we're going to integrate natural elements or biodegradable elements. Maybe these communities already use some baskets for some products, but these baskets are made of plastic, or sometimes they can be made of other materials that are much more accessible in that community. And maybe the way we offer a service is not that sustainable because we have to use too much fuel or energy, and we can see ways to save energy or fuel by integrating processes that include less carbon prints or footprints. For instance, we have a product and service through a process that involves a high carbon footprint, we can incorporate the new green model, and we can insert new ways of producing. Not they don't have to be completely new products or services. After this step, I always recommend to create a filter of a chaotic event, or the worst case scenario, let's say. Once we incorporate this idea to the community, what could happen? In create a series of worst case scenarios where our ideas can have a destructive or negative impact for the community, so we can take into consideration the material, what this idea can generate. The community is our laboratory where we have all the elements that are participating and collaborating with our new idea, product, or service. And there we can test how green our solution will be and how our solution will contribute to improve the ecosystem, the social and economic aspects of a community, for instance. Then we have to check, as Adrian has mentioned, the entrepreneurial models. There are many. I can share the ones we have developed in the social responsibility department, where we have a system that we have developed. We have started a model that has a much more social model than economic one, and goes through understanding the environment that the entrepreneur needs, which involves having a creative environment that does not restrict him or her. The innovation has to be very open. All actors involved have to provide, have to come from different parts of the society, so we do not get stuck in the technical aspect or in the academic aspect of this new idea, but we have to have this dialogue with common life. We also refer to integrating the social responsibility in 3 different dimensions: the social, economic, and environmental aspects. And something very important is to accompany all the processes with the entrepreneur. And we sometimes give a business model to the entrepreneur to get on board with this process, like if the entrepreneur was in any type of business, but the entrepreneur needs to be accompanied through this model, so he or she can envision the model of change. This, we need to accompany the entrepreneur to tell him or her when and how to have constructive critics to certain parts of the process. We need to observe the trends that we see in our business model our product depending on the industry where we want to launch the service or product. Look at the food trends, for instance, or look at the logistics service trend or delivery sector trend. These are things that have to be taken into consideration during this stage. And also the new opportunities in marketing. While going through this pandemic, we have increased the electronic commerce, and we can see a great variety and a very interesting convergence in this type of models. Finally, I would like to answer the question that some entrepreneurs have asked me. Do we have to prioritize social aspects or economic aspects or environmental? So when we talk about the theory of change, it'll be a great guideline to make sure that these goals include the social, economic, and environmental aspects. When we only prioritize a green business or a green company, we're not taking into consideration the social and cultural impact of our entrepreneurship, and this will set us back. When we find out that it has an impact because a community is marginalized, or we do not take into consideration the cultural aspects, we will have to go back to fine-tune our business model process. So we have to do this from the very beginning. Finally, which are the main obstacles for the green entrepreneur? I think that the main barriers that I have witnessed with social or green entrepreneurships is the concept isolation, sensorial, theoretical, and experimental isolation. This entrepreneur lives very isolated and thinking that from his or her garage, classroom, he or she will be able to move forward. And they fear to share these ideas, and we have to build this new idea from very many aspects. We don't want to be entrepreneurs because we want to make sure that we're going to do things right first, and that delays the idea of having some failures to learn, making mistakes to learn. When I asked the EcoInnovation Network what was the main barrier to start working in green companies, and they said because they fear they won't be successful, but we have to try to make it happen. Is it necessary a green entrepreneurship? Well, I think that we need to start right away. A renewed world will always need our help, but we have to be very brave to to want to change things. And I remember the Ratatouille film where the Chef Gusteau says anyone can cook. And I think that as anyone can cook, anyone can be a social or a green entrepreneur. You just need to have this desire to try to have these discussions and work on this idea. So these are my contact information. This is my contact information. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Claudia. That was an excellent presentation and raised some very important issues around this field of green, sustainable social entrepreneurship. And we look forward to coming back to you during the question session as well. And I apologize, Demi is still with us, but we are having some technical issues. So I'm going to take over a little bit of the MC duties here for the next little while, and we will keep moving along. Our third and final presenter today is Tanya Delmato. Tanya is an experienced sustainability professional who has worked with a variety of private sector industries, public sector institutions, nonprofit organizations, and social purpose businesses. She serves as the founding director of Greenhouse, a social impact incubator hosted within St. Paul's University College at the University of Waterloo. It's a program designed for students to create and launch projects and startups that tackle pressing social and environmental problems. Tanya has a bachelor and a master of environmental studies from the University of Waterloo. And Tanya, it's great to have you with us today. Thank you for spending the time, and thank you for the content you're about to share with us.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and just like to also thank my my panelists and the topics that they've covered. I think you'll find that all three of us share different aspects and angles to consider here. So let me just get my slides up. And there we go. All right. Can everybody see that okay? I'm going to assume so.
You will have to share the other screen. We are seeing the presenter view.
Oh, okay. And you don't want a sneak peek, I'm sure. Let me just see here. The slideshow. There we go.
So
okay.
You will have to change. That's okay now.
There we go. All right. Awesome. Okay. So as Brock introduced me in those welcoming remarks, Greenhouse is a social innovation community located at the University of Waterloo. And our primary kind of focus is helping young people start businesses, start change projects that tackle social or environmental problems. And I think that this picture, although we love to be back in person, I think is really illustrative of our community in terms of bringing young people together and putting them in a supportive environment to help make their ideas happen. On our programming side, we help both students that have ideas launch ventures, and then we also help students that might not have a specific idea yet, but want to do something meaningful in the world. We actually bring them together in teams to solve social or environmental problems within organizations. So sort of there's an entrepreneurial and an intrapreneurial aspect to the work that we do. So for today's presentation, I kind of looked at that question of how do you start a green business, and wanted to highlight in particular the you part, being you as the change maker, you as the entrepreneur. How do you start a green business? And I wanted to use some examples from our innovation community to kind of illustrate 5 tips for getting started. And I think that these complement the previous 2 presentations as well. So hopefully you can take away parts of this to get your venture up and running. Just to kind of give you a high level of what these ventures are about, Egg Planter, that purple logo up there at the top, they're a venture that looks at supporting homeowners in actually growing food within their own backyards, and they have a technology and a planning tool to do that. Preceding that, Divina right underneath is a company that promotes and specifically targets consumers that are looking for more fair trade, sustainable clothing, and kind of curates options there. The Toy Exchange Club, it is sort of how it sounds. It's for parents that are looking to, rather than purchase toys, actually be part of a sharing program in which they have a membership and they're sharing toys as the child kind of develops through from birth to like age 3, kind of that age range. Clear the Air is a more of a nonprofit venture actually that looks at mobilizing and empowering young people to take meaningful action on climate change. Food Not Waste kind of tackles the issue of food waste and food insecurity. And lastly, Green Bricks looks specifically at plastic waste and how can we use that material to build more sustainable housing, and specifically in countries in South America. So those are the examples that I'm going to pull upon today for the 5 tips for getting started. So the first tip, it might seem like really obvious, but sometimes we get so caught up in our heads and our ideas and planning that we forget that we need to get out there and engage in the real world and talk to real live humans about our ideas. And so what I wanted to sort of highlight in this tip in particular is also the way in which we engage with people. You know, often we will come up to different folks and say, hey, what do you think about, you know, if this product or service existed, would you end up buying it? And sort of we tend to kind of gravitate into those sort of questions, and they are very kind of hypothetical in a way, right? In that they don't speak specifically to what that individual's current lived reality is. And so being mindful of how we go about framing our questions in those sort of early days of customer discovery, and trying to understand what are folks' lived experience, current realities, frustrations, pain points, gaps that they're currently experiencing, because that information is definitely a little more informative than going down the route of, if this were in place, would you end up purchasing it? So that's my tip number 1. And to kind of give you an example of like talking to humans. So this is Eggplanter's stakeholder map, if you will. And over the course of 4 months with us, spent a lot of time going out, engaging with people, interviewing people, networking. And also the beauty about talking to humans is not only do you better understand your potential customer, but then you also pick up along the way potential advisors or other team members that might also want to join in your venture as well. So definitely something that, you know, right off the hop, like often I ask folks when they come to see me, who have you spoken with already about this problem, right? To get a sense of how much they've engaged in the space and have an understanding of who's in the space. So that's tip number 1, talking to humans. Tip number 2, go sell something. And some people are like, but I don't have a product or service yet. It doesn't matter. I mean, the sooner you get out there and try and sell what you're envisioning or what you want to put out in the world, the more immediate you'll start getting feedback, which will then inform that product or service that you're looking to put out there into the marketplace. So, you know, rather than investing a huge amount of time in, you know, developing a product or service, get out there with any sort of prototype, example, concept, and get out there and start selling it. And it can take it can take the form of many different actions. In some cases, it's about trying to bring people on board for the first pilot and showing, you know, what that, you know, piece of software or service will look like through a PowerPoint presentation, for example. The whole point is you want to get out there as soon as possible and start selling. So, so one of the examples, this is Davina, the company Davina. Their whole space that they were looking at was, you know, wanting to kind of test out the marketplace on, you know, are people looking for fair trade clothing, more sustainable clothing, and what can we do maybe if we curate from various suppliers more sustainable clothing? You know, what does that market look like? So they ended up doing a whole bunch of different pop-up stores, and each pop-up store got more and more elaborate and engaging. And immediately, just from going out and doing that interaction with their customers, they were able to really get a better sense of who they were looking to serve and really kind of fine-tune their offerings as well. So it's definitely something that I advise, you know, any entrepreneur just starting out, like, what have you sold? Like, think about it. Like, what can you sell next week, right? And that really pushes you out of your comfort zone, perhaps, but it helps you in terms of getting the feedback for your idea as well. Tip number 3, and I think Claudia touched on this a bit in her presentation as well, is as a green entrepreneur, it's really important that you demonstrate that you are green. So just by the nature of embracing that label of being a green business, you're putting yourself and your company out there to say, you know what, we aspire to be of a higher standard, right? Pick us over the conventional option. So as a result, you're going to get, and rightly so, a greater level of kind of critique or analysis on what you're doing. So you want to make sure that you are in fact practicing what you're preaching, right? And making sure that you're doing best to be as sustainable or as green as possible. And part of this as well is you don't necessarily have to be perfect at this either. It's really about being transparent about, you know, where is your company at? This is what, you know, you're currently offering. This is kind of the process in which we've used to determine, you know, these products that we're offering are in fact as green as possible, or, you know what, we're innovating more in this space to get to an even more significant point in advancing sustainability. But you always have to be aware of this. It's about building trust, right, with your customer. And if your core sort of value proposition is being green, then you need to demonstrate like how you are delivering that. So I've got a few examples there. So with the toy exchange company, this is sort of like they offer a monthly subscription, and you get a variety of toys in the mail, and it's kind of crafted along the lines of the age group that your child is in. On their website, they very clearly articulate, because one of their core values is also offering toys that don't have the, you know, the plastics or the toxic chemicals in them. So they do a lot of work on being very transparent about how they go about curating these items and what sort of screeners they use and the relationships that they have and those sorts of things. So kind of a very concrete example of just how, and also recognizing that there's certain categories of toys where they're still trying to navigate and find the more sustainable option as well. So again, even if you don't get to that kind of gold standard, it's really important for the trust building to kind of interact and be transparent about where you are in the journey, if you will. Another example is Clear the Air. So this is the venture that's looking to mobilize young people on taking meaningful action on climate change. And the founder does a lot of work on having a blog and podcast series to kind of talk about, you know, how do you navigate this space of sustainability as a young person, and how do you embrace it in your own everyday life, right? And so she puts out there a variety of things that she's doing and different, you know, the choices that she's making with respect to, you know, transportation or the products that she's purchasing or the energy or water use that she's using, right? And just kind of making it, again, like really transparent and walking the talk. And, you know, not necessarily saying, you know, I've got all the answers, but putting it out there in terms of like, you know, really reflecting the value set that you want to communicate as a green entrepreneur. Tip number 4, fall in love with the problem and not your solution. So what I mean with this is that for entrepreneurs just starting out, you've kind of got this idea and, you know, this problem that you want to solve. The idea is going to change because, and it may change dramatically. It might change on the edges, if you will, right? And this is all because as you get out there and start to engage with your audience and your target customer, you might unpack something like, oh, you know what, there's already activities in this space. And rather than duplicate that, I see that there's this other gap that's not being filled, right? So it's still trying to solve that, that environmental challenge that you're passionate about, but maybe it's done, what you're offering, it's done in a different way. So it adds value to what's already there. So I often say this to the students and young entrepreneurs that we support. And the other part to this too is that it's really tough being an entrepreneur. So if you're not in love with the problem that you're trying to solve, it's really tough to sustain the energy to kind of see, that's going to be required to make it happen. So you really have to be in love with it as well. So it's also kind of a gut check, right? In terms of, are you on the right path? Are you doing what you're really passionate about as well? So some example of this is food not waste. So on the left, when Elle was with us starting this venture, really passionate about food waste, also passionate about food insecurity, set up a program that actually was able to identify significant food waste streams coming out of urban farmers markets, and redistributed that food, the food that was still usable, to community food programs, and did some great work there. That whole initiative ended up being adopted by a more established local organization. She kind of took a step back from it, and was feeling like, okay, well, maybe this isn't necessarily like, she couldn't find the appropriate business model to kind of keep it up and running. Took a step back, ended up doing a master's program in innovation entrepreneurship, still had that strong burning desire on the food side, and now has a company called El Chef, which is a venture in which he actually teaches folks how to make bread. and perhaps, as you can appreciate, depending on where you're situated, as soon as the pandemic happened, lockdowns happened, there was a run on people making bread. So her company, she was well positioned, and her company has actually taken off since then. So bit of a pivot, right, from her original idea, but still in that whole space of food and something that she loves. One of my last tips is ask for help, right? As Adrian had mentioned earlier, it's really important to get connected with community support programs, whatever is happening locally, right? So try and, as much as possible, and this kind of fits into talking to humans, is you need to build a support network around you. You alone can't do this all on your own, right? And nor should you. So asking for help, tapping into those resources, surrounding yourself with people that are equally passionate about solving the environmental challenge that you've identified, super critical to kind of sustaining your effort, and also super critical for just unlocking opportunities, right? The more that you've built your support network, the more opportunities there are for collaboration, for funding, all those sorts of things. So hugely important. The last example with this would be venture green bricks. So this is concept of looking at plastics that don't end up being recycled. How might we use these to actually reformulate them into sort of like these huge Lego bricks, if you will, that can be used to build structures. And so Green Bricks is exploring this product, actually looking at the housing issue in countries in South America. Out of the gate, always asking for help, always kind of connecting with different networks, putting yourself out there, getting involved in pitch competitions, all this kind of stuff, right? Building a network, building a community around you. So super, super important in terms of getting your idea going. And like I said, never feel like you can do it by yourself. It's just, it's a lot more fun if you can build a community around you to make your ideas happen. So those are my 5 tips to convey. Lastly, on my last 2 slides, how you might be able to get engaged, how we might be able to help you, regardless of which part of North America you're situated in. Please, I invite you to follow us on Instagram. We're always profiling these various startups, and we have now with, offering everything online. There's events and opportunities that you could perhaps engage in, irregardless of if you're a student or not. So critical way to kind of keep on top of that is following us through Instagram. And then if there are some folks out there that are students at the University of Waterloo, highly encourage you to reach out. We have accepting applications to our social innovators in training, and that will be starting in January. Free 12-week training program, help you kind of get your idea off the ground and have opportunities to access some funding to do it. So feel free to absolutely reach out there. Lastly, this is my contact information. You'll of course find me on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. So thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you, Tanya. And I'll invite Adrienne and Claudia to come back and join us as well. We've been getting lots of questions in the Q&A section. So let me start with Tanya, since you're already primed with the mic live.
For sure.
Touches on one of your final slides there, but Liju at Simon Fraser University wants to know if you have to be a Waterloo student to get engaged in Greenhouse's programs, and if they were interested, how could they sort of better connect and explore opportunities for getting engaged with Greenhouse? So maybe you could build a little on your final couple of slides there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely encourage you to the first part is just follow us on Instagram, because we're always posting different opportunities there. So whether it's events that we're hosting online or innovation challenges, those are going to be wide open for anyone to participate in. In terms of our more in-depth like mentoring and support, obviously being at the University of Waterloo, kind of our primary focus is delivering support to UW students, but always, interested in sort of connecting as well. So if you've got a certain like area of interest or a particular venture in a specific space, and if out of our community we have similar ventures, we can always kind of make those connections, and you can just, formulate some more peers around you, right, that are trying to do some amazing things to make an impact in the environment space. So reach out. That's the first step, is reach out, and then we'll go from there.
Excellent. And I have a question for Claudia. This was from Christian, who wants to know about the work that he's doing with a civil society organization that supports vulnerable groups. It's a not-for-profit organization, and he's wondering if you could talk about how some of the ideas you shared relate to groups like his in that not-for-profit space.
Of course. This is a very interesting question, and I think that it depends on the legislation that applies for civil organizations that are nonprofit. We have organizations in Mexico that, for example, an organization of the civil society operate like any company, because what they obtain in the way that they are working with the community that is benefited, that doesn't become like a company of workers, because it's a different organization. We would have to first know what is the legal, or what are the laws for that or civil organization that is going to work in the community. And there are different options. For example, we work in a community which is a turtle farm, and there's a community of farmers, and working with them in protection of the turtles, we made a special diagnosis regarding the needs of the community. And what they wanted was to have money in order to fix the park better, where all the community and the children met. And it was a very interesting place for this community, culturally speaking. So we had this idea that there was a lot of plastic waste, and that is how we designed a great network so that all the community could participate collecting all the plastics. And we organized an alliance that worked with a community that was a little bit farther out. And they would come and collect all the plastic waste that they segregated. And then they received money. And with that money, they created a fund in order to improve the community and the turtle farm. But the civil organization could be for children or for women or for senior citizens, and see what are the possibilities so that these beneficiaries could participate elaborating the product. It could be, for example, soap manufactured with marine algae because we are in a coastal area, or maybe it could be a company that could donate plastic waste with which you can design maybe a pencil or a frame or a basket, that this process could be taught to the members of the civil organization that you want to involve, and to obtain a product that has a sense of marketing with social benefit. And it is managed differently to the commercial marketing. So that would be my suggestion. And if you want to know more about this, well, you can write to me.
Excellent. Thank you, Claudia.
Gracias,
Adrienne,
Claudia.
Maurizio was in touch with us and wanted to know if you could give another example of a break-even analysis. I think he was interested in the idea and just wanted to get a more practical example of how it works.
Wonderful. Can I share my screen? I actually saw that, so I pulled up the calculation. So I'll share my screen. I'm a more of a visual person, so I will share my screen and I will show you this is the business template that we use, the business plan template that we use in our office. But along the bottom is an example for something for that break-even analysis. So essentially how the calculation works is that you want to take what are your total overhead costs. So these are the things that you have to pay for regardless of sales coming into the business. So if you have rent that you need to pay, your insurance, these are fixed costs. So that's your very first number that's going to be on the top. Then you have the P minus C. So P is the price that you're charging clients for your product. In this example, it's $10 for this product. So the P minus C. The C is, sorry, it gets a bit technical, but the C is cost of product. So I have my cell phone in my hand. For the manufacturer, it came at a cost to them. For the screen, for all the technology inside, this cost them money, and then they're selling it to us at a different price. So that's where the C comes in. So I've worked with clients who maybe are doing handmade clothing, or they're reusing old clothing and making it into new products. So sometimes that C is quite low. So essentially what you want to do with this calculation is take your overhead costs each month and then divide it by that 10. So in this example, it's $10,000 is the hypothetical costs for the year or the month. I'm charging my clients $10 per product. The direct cost to me is $4. So I have $10,000 divided by 6, which means that I have to sell 1,667 units of this product just to make my ends meet. So this is a really good calculation, especially if you have those fixed overhead costs like rent that you're incurring each month. I hope that answered the question. It can be a bit technical, but I hope that helps start to answer the question.
Excellent. That's a great response. And now that you've showed that on the screen, it'll be captured in the video as well. So people will be able to see that afterwards.
And I can put some resources in the chat as well. If that's okay, I have a couple of links that I brought up. I can also put that in the chat.
Yep, perfect. That sounds great. And Sarah had a question for Tanya. Tanya, you talked about if you're a green business, you really need to demonstrate that you're a green business. And part of that is making sure your supply chain is pretty green. So can you recommend any good ideas or tools or approaches for searching out a truly green product supplier?
Well, I guess you can obviously get in touch with it more specifically, but I guess I answer that more generally. It depends on the product or service you're offering, right? So in some spaces, there will be things such as like eco labels, right? That are third-party certifications. You can kind of use those sorts of frameworks. You can use things like the B Corp framework. It talks a lot about not only the environmental, social, but also kind of the economic piece, making sure that, fair wages, those sorts of things as well. So those are kind of templates for different certifications where you can work with suppliers. I know that there's also companies out there that will work with a business and kind of help do that analysis for you. So it might even be something that, depending on the space that you're in and how far your company is along, it might be worth the investment of hiring a supply chain specialist to kind of give you some of that, that more specific advice, right? So, but do reach out if you've got more specifics on that, feel free. I'd be happy to send you some resources. It all depends on the area that you're in, so.
Excellent, thank you, Tanya. I'll point out that in the chat, Adrienne has already posted that blog post on break-even analysis. So I know from the chat function, some people can't use the chat. Professor Arap Bor in Kenya, I did see your message there earlier. We apologize for that, but hopefully everybody can see what's in that chat function, and Adrienne has shared some things there. We do have another question that I'm going to pose to both Claudia and Adrienne. Maybe I'll start with Claudia. And this was a question about the most used tools that somebody wanting to be an entrepreneur could use as they think about how to start their business. And so the business model Canvas was mentioned a couple of times today, but what other tools or resources would you recommend? Maybe there's a great book or a great website or a great tool that you would recommend to somebody who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. Claudia, do you want to take that first?
Yes, of course. Well, I think that the business world has developed a lot of theory with regards to how to do commercial entrepreneurship. There are many models, and every day there's one new. And I think that the great summary of all this is that somebody is with us with the theory in order to order the chaos that a businessman can, or the entrepreneur can have. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed with all the information of the product, of the market, and the need for financing, everything together, and we don't know which one is the priority. And here I think it's worthwhile to review of what is the status of the beginning that we have. If we already have the marketing information, if we already have financial information, and we already have the product information, then it is worthwhile to look for entrepreneurship model that complements the part that is missing. Everything's going to cover everything, but it's not the same thing to start or to cover entrepreneurship model if we're still lacking information from marketing. So my recommendation would be to see what we have first to start with this game, and from there to go in depth to have all the elements and to see what is the model that is more important. I think Adrienne can tell us which are the models. Thank you.
So I know that earlier I spoke about different tools, but Tanya and Claudia have also mentioned it's your network. If you could do one thing today and you're thinking about starting a business, is go to LinkedIn, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to other successful entrepreneurs in your space, because they are really excited to see that other people want to break into their field, especially if they're entrepreneurs or green sustainable businesses, social enterprises, not-for-profit organizations, ones that have been established and have been around for a while. They are a good case study because they have been around for a while, which means they're doing something right and sustainable. So if you could do one thing, the business models are great. Knowing your cost structure is great. Understanding your market is important, but talk to people and talk to your network. That would be one of the very first steps that I would do. And then I'll share my screen again because I know that it's recorded so you can capture it. I I talked about the business model canvas earlier, but I just pulled up really quickly on Google the Flourishing Business Canvas. So this looks at the environment, society, and economy. So it's a larger canvas that takes that environmental and society and it combines it. So as you're connecting with your network and speaking with people, that tool can help you just brainstorm and jot down ideas. Thank you.
Maybe time for one final question. I'll pose this to Tanya, but Uriel in Winnipeg has asked us about the need to kind of balance this sense that you have to do a lot of research and have a lot of things prepared to be a successful entrepreneur versus sometimes you need to jump in and just get started and do something. So how do you suggest that people strike that balance?
Yeah, well, you know what? Like, I mean, I'm a lot about action because sometimes continual reading is a form of procrastination, and you're not getting out there, you're not making those connections, and not understanding who's doing what. So, at the very least, like, you know, by virtue of networking and talking to folks that are in the space that you're looking to get into, who knows where those conversations can go, right? So you might have a sense like there's a gap in a certain area, and then after you talk to like 5-10 different connections and colleagues, you realize that, ooh, you know what, I've just uncovered that there's this really neat business that's doing something really meaningful in this space, and you know what, they can even use my skills. And so part of this entrepreneurial journey is also, you know, you might end up finding opportunities where you can join forces with others as well, right? Because one of the important things to kind of take stock of in your own journey is what part of this space are you passionate about, right? Because there's certainly sort of the structures of creating a business and administering it and doing the marketing and all that stuff. But you might just also very well be more interested in the product innovation, right? So maybe there's more, you know, you're better suited to a role that you work with inside a company to build that environmental information and innovation, and not necessarily be consumed by, you know, the marketing, the sales, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd just say, yeah, get out there, talk to as many people as you can in the space, and just try and figure out, you know, what feels right for you, right? And be open to different possibilities. Because realize that it's really tough to start something on your own. So it very well might be through those conversations you find something where you can join forces with others.
Excellent, thank you very much. And in the background here, I'm attempting to switch to screen sharing. We are right up against the time limit for today's sessions. I do want to say thank you very much to everybody who's participated. We had about 200 people in the session today, which is absolutely great. This is the second of 6 sessions, and I do want to sort of point out that we will be back again next week for a similar kind of topic, entrepreneurship and the sustainable development goals. And you can see on the screen the range of presenters we have here. Our first week was entirely in English. This week we have been bilingual with English and Spanish. Next week we will be trilingual as we go literally across the continent for some of the key thinkers in the issues of entrepreneurship and the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Charles Baudry from Montreal, Raul Hernandez from Mexico City, and Grace Rodriguez from Houston, Texas will be a part of the session as they share their ideas about how entrepreneurs can work towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I hope that you'll be able to join us. And just as a final word today, I do want to thank our 3 presenters very much. We appreciate the effort that went into sharing this information. I want to thank Demi, our MC, even though the technology didn't work out for the full session, but appreciate her efforts. Cesar and the IT team, the technical team at the CEC, to Liliana on the event side, to the translators. We're very grateful for the support that you've given to us today, and we look forward to seeing everybody again next week. Thanks very much and have a great week.